Well, I feel old. It's been 30 years since we saw a zero go to a hero with The Mask starring Jim Carrey. This was probably the first film I saw Cameron Diaz in. This is her introduction to movies. Peter Green, Zed from Pulp Fiction, played the bad guy in this, and who could forget Jim Carrey as Stanley Ipkiss? As a 90s kid and people who grew up in the 90s, he had three seminal films that defined Jim Carrey. And it was Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and this. Now, outside of those films, before Batman Forever, I actually saw Once Bitten, a very early role of his. But, this was such a cool film. I remember watching the VHS endlessly. It had the trailers for Dumb and Dumber and Mortal Kombat on it. New Line Cinema, and this was based on a comic book. Although the comic book was a bit more Deadpool-like and more ultra-violent. This was PG-13, but it was still pretty heavy when it needed to be. I remember getting action figures watching the Mask cartoon on CBS. Speaking of action figures, remember these little flip heads? I used to have a Tommy Power Rangers. There's the Mask, and then you get his arm, and he flips into Stanley Ipkiss. So it's Mask, and then after that it'd be smoking. Who could forget the revolutionary use of CGI, the cartoon aspect, the soundtrack with the music, Hey Pachuco, and that nightclub scene? I love seeing Stanley Ipkiss go from working at a bank, seeing Cameron Diaz, who's working with the bad guys, kind of check out the bank. And then finding Loki's mask, in the garbage in this water after his car broke down. And then fully being possessed by Loki's mask and becoming this character. And Jim Carrey brings not only the cartoon element of the comic, but then adds his own comedic flair to it, creating something truly unique. And it's a shame that they had Son of the Mask, even though it has underrated elements. It's just not the same as the first film. This is a one lightning in a bottle kind of film. It would be interesting if they did another adaptation that was a bit more like the comic, but overall, this is a classic film, and who could forget Stanley Ipkiss's dog, the police after him, and then ultimately when Damien takes over the Mask and Stanley's arrested. I mean, there's so many ups and downs to this movie, but I just wanted to reflect briefly upon it on its 30th anniversary. I mean, I just love the different comedic moments in this film, the humor. It's very much like Looney Tunes come to life, and Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz were great in this film. And Jim Carrey, as always, is in his element, but here, he had Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, this, Batman Forever, he was so in his element here. And it's crazy seeing the roles that defined his career in this year, So many projects so close together, and it's just amazing. If you ever see the Man on the Moon documentary about Jim Carrey playing Charlie Kaufman, it's very enlightening as far as this year of cinema. But The Mask is still smoking after 30 years, I have to say. People don't really talk about the sequel too often. People kind of remember the cartoon here and there, like Ace Ventura or Beetlejuice on CBS. But this movie, I watch it every time it shows up on Superstation, TBS, TNT, FX. I love this movie of The Mask. It's just one of a kind, and they don't make movies, let alone comic book movies like this anymore, hardly, And yeah, after 30 years, I still think it's a very unique, ambitious film. Although it does feel very 90s, It feels very much hey, what if we get that kind of South Florida, Miami flair of a neo-noir and put it into the 90s, and that's what you kind of get with The Mask, with the aesthetic. But yeah, there's just something with Jim Carrey and Green, I have to say, between Kick-Ass Riddler and this, so yeah. Anyway, let me know your brief memories and thoughts of The Mask. When did you first see it? Were you even born when this came out? It's crazy to think that this film turned 30 years old, but I absolutely enjoy this film, and it's nice seeing certain actors when they were younger. And how the film holds up today, and I think it might be more appreciated now given the array of comic book films we've seen in Hollywood and cinema. Let me know your memories of The Mask. In the meantime, check out these other videos for more content. Till next time.